The topic is Killed on Duty, and we're going to talk with experts in this panel on this field of, education and policing and mental health. So let me just quickly ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Kira, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, good evening. My name is Kira Douziech. I'm a 19-year member with the Edmonton Police Service. I currently work in our recruiting and selection unit, but have worked in our different areas of the service, behavioral assessment unit, domestic violence section, as well as employee family assistance section and patrol.
Thank you. Now we'll move to Solomon. Uh, just a quick introduction, Solomon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Solomon Eluwa. I'm a crisis intervention specialist. I've been doing this for about 9 years now, and it's nice to meet everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now we have another panelist who I really can't see. Maybe the camera is not working. Liyu, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you all. My name is Liyu. I'm sorry, I'm in a position where I cannot put on my camera. I am really, really sorry for that, but I can hear you and I can see you guys. So I'm Liyu. I work for the Africa Center coordinating a youth program, basically serving high school youth that are at high risk, mainly related to, suspension and expulsion due to missing classes and misbehaviors and things like that. Yeah, and I'm also part of the African community. Thanks.
Awesome. Great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. So it's a very difficult topic to talk about, and it was very shocking for the entire, I think, for the entire world if somebody heard about this. But especially for Edmonton police and Edmonton citizens. There were two young police officers who were killed on duty by a child who really did not have any reason to have a gun with him. So I'm going to ask Kira about what are the ways in which we can, prevent kids from having violent weapons.
Well, I think that that's a huge question and probably a lot of parts to that. I don't know enough about all of his background. I don't know if if it's been released to the public. We certainly don't know internally all of his background. Obviously, I think mental health, and Solomon, as you would know, we're in a huge crisis right now with mental health. I think that I have seen it more so in the last few years. I think COVID certainly brought on a lot of things, and I think that a lot of our youth are suffering with connection and just good role modeling in their younger years. And so I don't have an answer as far as the weapons that are on the street, because I don't know how the young people are getting the weapons. But I do know that this is something that has got to start with good role modeling from a very young age, and just a real focus on mental health for our youth.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kira. You're right. So moving to Solomon, he has a lot of experience in this area of mental health. The the most difficult situation is when there is a child who has a mental health problem and then he has a weapon that he can easily access. That is not a good combination, and so it's really sad to see that we had to lose two lives. I'm just wondering, whether there would be any like outcome from this, that some kind of rules or something like that that would prevent this from happening again. That's the reason I asked you this question. But
Well,
moving on to Solomon, my question to you would be how do we train our kids to be more responsible?
to answer your question, and I would want to build up on how Kira had opened the floor. To be honest, I would, if I'm to establish a timeline, I would say the mental health crisis actually skyrocketed exponentially since the beginning of the pandemic, because everyone did not know what to expect. As far as I'm concerned, normal life ended as we knew it because there were a whole lot of things that were playing out simultaneously, and we did not have enough manpower. So, prior to the pandemic, we did not have enough mental health awareness. We didn't have enough programming for adults, let alone younger people like children and youth experiencing mental crisis. There was not enough programs, and in the place where we had programs, we didn't have enough manpower. So, looking at your question, I wouldn't want to focus on how to train children. It's going to be a function of how to listen more for non-verbal cues. So, someone experiencing a mental health crisis would not express themselves saying, I'm having a mental health crisis. To be honest, they wouldn't even know they have a mental health crisis. It takes a whole lot of experience to understand the cues as to knowing when someone has a mental health crisis. So it's more based on how everyone. It's not a focus on parenting. It's not a focus on policing. It's everyone's due diligence. It's just like how do I put it? It's like first aid. Everyone should understand the basic tenets regarding first aid. It's the same thing with mental health because mental health is the driving force behind physical manifestation. So I am not sure what was going on with this kid in question. Neither am I sure what was going on in the mindset of the two brave officers that went for that call, that answered that call, because no one knew what to expect. No one knew the outcome. In terms of the policing parts, I'm sure they have routines as to how to actually answer such calls, and I'm sure those brave officers followed the due process. And in terms of the victim and other people affected, I am sure to the best of their knowledge, they have done everything possible. So the issue here is, what are the indices? What are the key factors to actually help people understand how to sense that mental crisis? Because the first thing is, they are always nonverbal. They are always nonverbal. Nobody would come out and say, I am depressed. They might not know they are depressed, but there are some indications that you will know that somebody is going through a lot. Behavioral changes, a spike in activities, a decrease in activities. Some people begin to change their eating habits, and people would not pick up on them. Some people begin to change their dressing habits. People would not pick up on them. Some people begin to have either social anxiety, or they even begin to go out more. Those are spikes. Those are like drastic changes that people close to them could pick up on. So it's more of a community effort, in my honest opinion, if that answers the question.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That was a very comprehensive answer. It covered a lot of points. Thank you so much for that. Uh, I will move on to Liu. And we just want to know, like, the kids that you've worked with, the kids, you probably know lots of kids who have different kinds of mental health issues. And, what are the kind of methods in which we, speak to them, or how do we know? And what do we do when we see these kind of mental issues?
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I will not repeat what Kira and Solomon said, but majority of the time when I talk to young people, some of like a very cross-cutting or something that comes across with most of the kids is lack of parenting, lack of attention from parents, because parents are also suffering from mental health. And it has to do with coping up with life, day-to-day things that and lack of social support. And definitely COVID had a big role. And in this, and parents do not always have the skills to help their youth, particularly talking from the immigrant point of view. Even perception of mental health is much lower than regular average Canadians, so that has a big impact on accessing services, as Solomon said, identifying mental health. And majority of the time, what works for me most of the time to help the youth is building good relationship with the youth, trusting your relationship, non-judgmental relationship. When they come to my office referred by their counselors or assistant principals, the initial discussion that I have is, how are you? How are you doing? Because majority of the time when they're called in the office, when they're referred to someone, it has to do with grades, it has to do with attendance, it has to do with school related things. But I just ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And then for some of them, because they don't open up right away, I try to connect it with future goals, setting career goals and stuff like that, and connecting them with people. And then they open up, and then anything that they tell me, I join them. I don't necessarily judge them. So that validation, that acceptance, that conversation that you build with them is what helps them open up with me. And I think that needs to happen with teachers, that needs to happen with parents, because when a child comes to their parent and talk to them about what happens at school, our initial reaction is like panic, or like anytime we hear negative things from our kids, we're like, oh no, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be involved in that. But they're going through a lot of things. Social media is giving them a lot of information. They don't know how to behave with social media. Even adults don't know how to behave with social media. I mean, forget kids. And kids, they have zero censorship. Fights are always happening because of social media, mean negative things. And then when they come and talk to their parents usually, oh, just ignore them, why don't you just, so kids don't get that validation of being hurt by their friends, by their peer. So they start taking it out on different things. Like, for example, they fight. One of the things that you commonly see is fighting in schools. Another thing is like skipping classes. The very behaviors that Solomon started indicating, using substance, is something that has become really prominent. Like, I work with some kids who come and tell me like, oh, I overdosed, by the way, last time, and my mom was mad at me. Like, that's how common it is, you know what I mean? So it's really like and then the level of understanding of parents of the situation of the youth is far away from the reality. So parents do not know how to support their kids are not open with their parents, and then in turn parents are not able to seek services for their kids. So it's a very complicated social issue for me, because parents need skills, parents need to know how to talk to their kids, and then definitely identifying the cues for mental health. And mental health, it has to do with a lot of things, as you said. One of the things that is driving the negative mental health is substance abuse. I was actually today reading a lot about, and alcohol use is beyond what you can imagine, and it's ending, a lot of youth are ending in emergencies because of alcohol use. The same with vaping actually was on the current this morning, when like how young people are perceiving vaping as a very healthy approach than smoking cigarette, which is affecting their cognitive abilities, reasoning, and all kinds of, mental function. So it's a whole round issue, and yeah, it needs a lot of understanding from all the people that are working with the youth, including schools, including the police, including parents. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a very, very detailed explanation. Thank you for that. Of course, parents don't have any parenting guidance. Many parents just get into parenting without having too much knowledge either. So it's very sad, but it's a very common state. And lots of parents have no clue how to take care of a child who's getting violent. They don't even know why the child has come into that situation or how to talk to that child. So I'm hoping that there are some agencies which have some parenting guidance programs for parents and stuff like that. Liu, is there something like that that Africa Center does?
I mean, it's through our different youth programs that we try to do this. It's not like particularly targeting parents, but because of the youth programs that we run, we have the natural connection with parents. So we try to give as much as we can, but it's not directly, targeting parents. But we're trying to work with more community partners to address that part of it.
Okay, thanks. Kira, as a person from the EPS, you must have seen a lot of juvenile crime. And you must have probably been at various places where you've actually witnessed something like that. What are the kind of situations, just that you generally, what is common among the youth and children of this age group, right from maybe grade 5 all the way up to grade 12?
Well, I can tell you, I mean, the place that I worked in before was behavioral assessment unit, and what we did was we monitored and managed high-risk offenders. And what would happen with us is that when they were being released from a significant sentence, they would then be released without any conditions. And I really saw that, you have someone that has spent 20 years in jail in the justice system, and they would come to us and we would then read all of their background. And when I started reading all of their backgrounds, we really saw that a lot of these problems started when these individuals were very young. They had behaviors that were inappropriate at a very young age, and then in their teenage years they got into drugs, they got into gangs. They were looking for that connection with some other group, with some people. And then I really saw where the justice system, if they weren't able to get out of it, they just ended up back in and outside of jail. And then if they've spent a significant time in jail and they have to come out, which is where we would then play our role, with that unless you help people when they're coming out, you're setting them up for failure. And there wasn't one person, and these are, when I talk about high risk offenders, these are people that you would see on the news that this person is being released, watch out for them, they're being released into the community. And we really realized, and this is why we work with social workers and with other partner agencies to help set people up, that if you don't help them set them up when they come out, to rehabilitate them into the community, they're just going to end up right back in jail. But I will say that all of them, there wasn't one of them that came out as a high-risk offender, deemed high-risk offenders by the courts, that did not have a youth criminal record, was not in and out of jail as a youth involved in drugs or gangs or weapons.
Wow. And what would you say? You might have had conversations with some of these young people, and what would you say? Where does it all start?
Well, for a lot of them, it was their home, their upbringing. They did not have a safe place at home. And for those of us, for anyone that has teenagers, I know I have teenagers myself. Teenage years are tough. They can be tough when you're at school. That is when you're not sure of yourself. If you don't have a safe place to come home to, that's a really tough time in your life. And for a lot of these individuals, they did not have a safe place to come home to. So, and for any of us that were lucky enough to have that growing up, when we had a rough day at school or junior high where you're insecure and you feel like you don't fit in, and you can just come home to like a home that is safe and a home where you're loved and where you're connected, that helps us get a good night's sleep and go back to school the next day and get through that. But if you don't have that already at home, it's just so much easier to slip into that life where you're not hanging out with the right people, because you know what, they're at least giving you that connection back. You're at least feeling part of some type of a group or a family. It's people wouldn't agree with whether that's a gang or whatever that is. It's still something that you're part of. And as humans, we want to belong to something. We want to feel that people care about us and are there for us. And for them, it's usually people that probably aren't the best influence.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's always childhood trauma that, causes much of these delinquent behavior. So going to Solomon, what are the things we can do to address these issues as youth? Like when youth, when you interact with them, when you work with them, what are the kind of things you can do to prevent such things from recurring?
To be honest, the first point, like I said earlier, is to know how to understand. Just understand your pointers, know the indications, because if you really don't know what you're looking out for, you really can't interact with them. There's no level playing field. So there's a disparity between how we grew up as children compared to how our kids are growing up right now, how the younger generation are growing up right now. I wouldn't say many of us even had that interaction, but there was what we knew as the norm, which has probably been eradicated with advance in technology, access to the internet. Because to be honest, you really can't blame parents or guardians, because they are trying to deal with life's issue. There's inflation that's going up, there's high cost of everything, there's job security, there's not enough money coming into the house. So parents are dealing with enough already. And we have kids that go to school and spend about 8 to 10 hours with the society. So there's societal influence, there's peer pressure, there's a whole lot of factors that affects. And just like what Kira had said, if there is no safe place for that child to come back to, they begin to develop a mind of their own. They begin to answer their own questions. And once a child answers, a young mind answers their own question, you really can't change that answer. It's always a very difficult standpoint. So, as a crisis intervention worker, I have done quite a number of assessments with young people. And to be honest, there's something called adverse childhood experience. So we have a scorecard called ACEs, and the ACE scorecard comes from a factor where, or it's impacted by different factors. So you have to understand that many people that have gone through the judicial system or the correctional system as young people were product of high ACEs. So ACEs factors are ranging from child neglect, emotional neglect, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse. Some of them witnessed violence as a child. Some of them witnessed their parents use drugs. Some of them witnessed fights. So over time, this becomes their norm. This is what they have seen as normal. They go into society. Society doesn't do so much because there are other societal factors that still either increases or influences or enhances those things that they have already sipped in from the house. So there's societal discrimination. There are particular race or particular demography of people that whether you are young or old, you fall under a certain type of discrimination. So basically, children under those categories do not get answers from the society. They can't feel safe in the society. They don't have people that would look out for them in the society. So as a crisis intervention worker, there are a few things that you can arm yourself with, and one of them is having to listen without judgment. You need to actually come from an informed and aware place. So basically, if you are interacting with a youth that has been through a lot, you have to actually balance the power dynamic. I wouldn't be speaking as an intervention specialist because that puts all the power dynamics in my hands. I would give them the power to actually explain, control the narrative of what they want to share. Because at that point, they would be teaching me about their experience, and I would just be listening, and that would help me have a very informed assessment. So, you need to have excellent listening skills. You need to be able to actually promote self actualization. You need to actually have to use skills of like maybe reflexivity. Compare your experiences as a child to the child that you are speaking with or the young person you are speaking with, and begin to mirror it down. I didn't go through what most of these kids are going through because I was fortunate enough to probably have somebody to talk to. This child did not have that opportunity. So who am I to actually judge them based on what was on their assessment, what was on their hazard assessment, what was on their file? I need to understand what they have gone through. I need to look at AC score. I need to come from a place of learning, and that would help me build that trust, because once you build trust, they begin to feel safe. And once they feel safe, they would open up more. And when they open up more, you are able to see those unspoken issues. It's not as easy as I make it sound, but if as many of us are able to listen without judgment, because the truth is, most times there's something that I've learned over time. The clients always, they're the most sensitive. So even if you do not judge verbally, your facial expression, your body language says a whole lot, and they see it because they have looked out to many people before they came to you. They've seen the negative responses verbally and non-verbally. So they look at that when they give you tips of experiences they want to share. So the more receptive you are to those information, the more non-judgmental you are. You are building bricks of trust, and that would help them open up more. The more they open up, the more you are able to learn about what the issue is. There are children that actually exhibit violent behaviors in school, and they just keep going to the principal's office. They keep getting suspended. but we don't look beyond the principal's office. If we sit down with the child and we're able to balance the playing field, we'll probably find out that maybe this child had witnessed enough violence in the home, and they have seen that the only way they could protect themselves is to be violent. So they do something called attack being the best form of defense. So before um they get attacked, they would attack first because that's what they have always done in the house, or that's what they've always seen. So having those skills to listen and balance, build trust, it's a very good stepping stone to start looking at the issues.
Wonderful. Have you been in a place where you've worked with some child and you've actually seen the child change?
Yes. So up until early last year, I used to work at a shelter that focused on women fleeing domestic violence, and
Hmm.
that was where I think I got the most experience from the impact of having having lived through the pandemic. So we had people that had to like witness domestic violence, experience domestic violence, simply because we're in a lockdown and their abusers were not allowed by law to leave the house. We're all locked up in the house. We couldn't go to work. So there were times when, prior to the pandemic, if let's say, let's assume here, and we are carefully assuming that one of the parents is the abuser, there are times when they have an off period because the abuser leaves home. But we're in a pandemic where everyone was mandated to go to the house and stay at home. The parks were closed, malls were closed, schools were closed. We're just cooped up in the house. So they saw more of it. And when we got clients that came in with their children, we noticed that they had a change in behavior because they were in a place where they had as many professionals, crisis intervention workers, intake workers, case managers that understood these indices and would speak to them differently. At first, the child would either go into fight or flight because it's different from what they have seen as the norm. But over time, you build that trust, you realize that the child begins to admire what they fantasize as what they would want to see as normal. So there's an adult speaking to me respectfully. There's an adult that does not yell or raise their voice when they're asking me a question. There's an adult that speaks like we are at the same age range. There's an adult that wants me to teach them something. And over time, they begin to like it, but they don't trust easily. But over time, they build that connection and they begin to share more of their experiences. That's where play therapy comes in. You do what they love, not what the program determines. So you use play therapy to get to their level and they see you as their friend, not as a figure of authority. And trust me, you do that over time and normalize their experience for them, you see that change.
Wow, that's beautiful. It's very, very inspiring. And I thank you for the work you do, Solomon. Um, Liu, can I just ask you for any situation that you've experienced that stemmed from something that happened at home, and you were able to help the child see through that and work through it?
I can pretty much say most of the cases that I work with it has to do with things like the aces, like what Solomon said, like their ace score would be high because they were probably neglected, parents are not talking to them, or they do not validate them, or their majority of the time, especially boys who are having risky behaviors, come with from a single mother family where dads are not around. So it's very common. One thing I would say that comes across is boys are a little harder to talk to. Like they don't open up easily. They don't share their emotions easily. They always try to appear like very okay, and they just hide it a lot, and it comes out in negative behavior. So we had to develop different strategies, engaging them with male role models, engaging them in Black Students Association activities. Those were the things that worked for us, but majority of the time, girls. I can say like this girl who has been coming to me since September, who was breaking down in the fall when school started because she had zero connection with her family. Like she was not understood in the family. And she didn't have a lot of friends. That was a big problem for her too. Like, because she is someone who loves people, but people take her for granted. So she didn't have a lot of friends. She comes from a family of four sisters, and her parents are together, but There's usually chaos at home, like parents are struggling with mental health themselves. So she's been struggling. So I've been working with her and helping her identify her inner strength. And now she's graduating from the high school, and I would say she's one of the successes that I've seen in terms of turning things around and making her feel more confident to solve her own problems. At the beginning, most of our conversations were full of crying. She would cry a lot. She would doubt herself a lot. Eventually, I could see that she was solving her own problems. She was already feeling confident to say no to people who were not treating her well. She was able to pick friends, and she was okay without friends. She was feeling more confident to be herself than being stuck with friends who are not appreciating her. And also, try to build. She's just tried to build better relationship with her parents, which is a little difficult because it's an ongoing thing, and parents are adults, and she's the first child, so it's not always too easy to be the first child because you are the one who makes mistakes, and your siblings get to learn from you, and you're always considered, oh, look at her, there's that labeling. So but now, she's come to terms with the fact that this is going to be part of her life, and she's dealing with it in a much better way, accepting some facts that she cannot change, and then controlling, focusing on things that she can control. So I would say she's one of the successes, but I would say I have a lot. Like, there are kids who've told me, if it weren't for you, if you didn't talk to me, I wouldn't be here. Like, so that relationship, that listening to them, I don't even do anything much. I try to listen to them, validate them, and then just guide them, just give them pointers here and there to see what's inside them, to see the beautiful person that's buried inside them, and help them, discover that person through different discussions and talks, giving my own examples and giving other examples. And that's the most important thing. That's what gives them the power. They feel like very confident because they know that there's an adult who understands them, just like Solomon said, an adult that they can trust to talk to and not be judged. Understood. Kids have come and told me all kinds of things, like, I've done this, I like this boy. I have heard a lot of boyfriend talks, like, I like this boy very much. So, which is a good thing, because they have built that trusting relationship with me. So I would say, yes, these are the successes that I have. But maybe pointing a little bit in terms of the solutions, what I would like to emphasize is, particularly when a child enters the school system, when a child enters, like, the justice system, looking at their ACE scores at the very beginning really, really helps, because you can find different supports for them. And sometimes parents may not be ready to get that support, but you can put the kids in the radar and approach parents in various ways. When you call parents and talk to them, or your child is behaving like this, parents become defensive because they feel like they are doing a good job. You know what I mean? So when you tell them right there, like, your child is this and that, they feel like they have failed, so they're on defense mode most of the time. But when you just call them and say, we're happy that your child is here, how are you, how's everything at home, is there anything that you want us to support you, those are the kind of approaches that I think we have to start showing, and particularly emphasizing again on schools. Like, trainings for teachers need to happen, because I can give you an example where this boy has been missing classes for quite some time, and he was called back in the school, and his sister came with him, and the reason why he was missing classes was because he was helping his sick mom. His mom was sick, so he had to stay home to help his mom.
Wow.
So, but the teacher's focus was so much on the assignment, like, okay, I'll just give you some work so that you can do at home. He didn't even ask, like, are you able to do something at home, or do you want to have some time off? Like, they could have, so the focus most of the time with teachers is like grades and assignments and, presence in class and stuff like that. So I think that education needs to happen for teachers, staffs that are working in schools, to see beyond the academic requirements and treat that child as a human being. And you can see the difference where the approaches from, like, the admin is more humanistic and this approach is emphasized. You can see throughout the school where teachers are working together to treat the child. When admin is so adamant on, like, the academic things, then you can see that the care is not happening for the children, and that behavior starts to happen. So the culture in schools needs to change. And then definitely the police. This is something that has been discussed so many times. The trust in the police, the amazing work that the police do, and the connection with the community needs to be strengthened, because they're there to protect us, and yet that relationship is not necessarily always there. So building that trusting relationship, we've seen a lot of good initiatives with the police, but we want that to be expanded, and that trust needs to be expanded more. So that concerted effort, I think, is going to bring the change more than anything. Yeah.
Wow, thanks, Liu, for the work you do. Wow, that was really cool. It was really nice to hear some of the ways that the girls opened up to you. I think most people who commit crime have been hurt by the closest people to them, by somebody who has been the closest to them, whom they trusted so much, and that trust has been broken, and so they feel rejected, and that is where most of this stems from. So like I from like our conversations, I think this is again being reiterated, that you all have dealt with this, and you have worked with many children who have faced these things. um, I would like to ask Kira, how many of these kind of incidents happen, like in maybe 5 6 years? Have you heard a lot of incidents where we have officers who are killed on duty or injured on duty, or they get into some kind of bad situation, and then they have to be treated in a hospital? And how does the police, like the EPS, deal with these kind of situations, and what are the the guards put in place to prevent these things from happening?
Actually, before I answer that question, I just wanted to touch on, made me think about, Solomon, what you were saying with kids, and just made me think about what Jody Carrington often says, is that you never see a mad that without a sad. And so that always just kind of resonates with me when we're dealing with kids on the job, or even with adults on the job. When people are really angry, there's usually a sad behind it. So that's really important for us all to remember. As far as, and I think when members are hurt on the job, we would call that a critical incident. There's a few things. We do a lot of training. First of all, in our recruiting process, we have embedded into our process that we are hiring police officers and members that have good coping strategies. They've got healthy family lives and support systems outside of this job, which is something that is really important when you are navigating some of the critical incidents that you're ultimately going to face while you're on this job. Unfortunately, as far as police officers getting hurt, it's happened quite a few times in my time on this job. And it's something that we do have we do have employee family assistance section, and that's involved. We have 3 police officers that work in there, and they're in charge of making sure that members and their families are reached out to and get that care after they go through a critical incident. But it's also one of those things where when we talk about kids or with mental health with anybody, it's not just the responsibility of our employee family assistance section. We want to provide that education to our entire service so that we can watch out for each other. Oftentimes when someone is struggling with mental health, or they're showing some signs, it's usually the people who are closest to them that start to see those changes first. It's not necessarily the person themselves. So we do have a critical incident stress management team, which is interdispersed all throughout our police service, made up of members, civilian members and sworn members, that when members are involved in a critical incident, they would reach out, someone from the team would reach out to them to check up on them and see how they're doing, make sure that they're not having any adverse reactions, making sure that they're getting the supports that they need. And then if they do need further supports, referring them on to a psychologist or someone that would be provided to them after that to help them with assistance. We also have family supports as well to help the family members of those members that go through incidents, because oftentimes the member themselves receives a lot of support from their coworkers and from their team at work, but the family members are often left worried about their partner or their father or their mother when they're out doing this job. So we offer supports to the family members as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so what exactly was the response to the situation that happened last month where this child shot these two officers? Like, how did EPS respond?
Well, I think that our response level happens at many different levels. You would see we have a lot of different divisions and areas and sections within our police service. We're made up of a huge contingency of our sworn members, but our civilian members are a huge part of our team as well. And we all consider ourselves one team. So I would say that the response would start at our level with our chief, and then goes down from every level from there. And you would see that that every area that you would work in their response would be a little bit different. So for example, I can speak to the area that I worked in. We came in that morning and after just hearing the news, and we're kind of just numb to what had happened. Something like that is, I would say that the city was shocked. Our country was shocked when that happened, and certainly the members were. So we would be provided with support from each other. Number one, that's usually how we deal with things, is to kind of look inward to each other. And then we would have our supervisors on top of that, our leadership teams that are then reaching out and providing that other layer of support, making sure that people who need time off are granted that time off, making sure that anyone who needs any other psychological supports can have those psychological supports. Unfortunately, because this isn't the first time that this has happened, we've unfortunately had practice at doing this. And that is one of those things that really does make you feel taken care of, is when you have every level of leadership is reaching out to take care of you at a time that they're also hurting. And I will say that during that time, the support from the community made a huge difference for members when they would see people that were standing along the funeral procession, or just reaching out and offering their condolences, neighbors, anyone from the general public. Those words of kindness and support, those mean so much to the members. I don't know if, I hope that we express that well enough to the community and just how much that support means.
Did the family get any kind of post-event support?
Yes, the family, through our employee family assistance section, as well as all the way from our leadership up to the top, they would be reaching out to them. They would be taken care of right from the time the incident occurred. And
there would also be a monetary loss of, because there would be a financial loss, right? Because these two officers were earning for their family, and they would be bringing home a certain amount of income. So what is, how does anything happen to support that piece?
Yeah, that would all be part of, I don't know as far as the actual numbers or what that would be, but so I can't comment to that, but there is that financial support as well.
Okay. All right. So, this is such a difficult topic, and I still remember the day this happened. It shocked me to the core. Like, imagine an officer going and just out of the blue, a freak accident, literally. And I'm not sure that how these children, do they go to the juvenile unit? I don't know where these children are taken post an incident like this. What happens to that child? So I would like to hear something about what happens to the child who has committed this incident without really knowing the impact of what he's done.
Well, obviously that wasn't the case in this incident, but in any other youth, they would be treated through the youth justice system is the proper channel that they would go through.
Okay. Do you, as Solomon and Liu, I don't know whether, like there are specific, like agencies that deal with serious mental health issues with youth, or do you deal with all kinds of mental health issues with youth?
To be honest, we have every mental health professional. One of the first things we pride ourselves in doing is the access to be a great resource to partner agencies. So, with the work I do, I have a relationship with the police. I have a relationship with government funders. I have a relationship with the educational school system. Just because nobody's work is isolated. So, a part of what the police would do is to give us a background of somebody that is probably there are times when we have clients that come right out of jail just because they have nowhere else to go. They can't go back to their family, or there's an EPO against somebody, or there's a no contact order, and they really do not want to send them back into the street. And I really commend that part of policing, because sending them back into the street just because they are done their time or they are out of jail just simply means we are recycling this, we are just restarting the system. So the police would probably call homeless shelters, crisis centers, in hopes that if one of us who will be partner agencies to the police in question would be able to take this person before they go through our timeline, there is a little bit of reform that could kickstart something. So let's use the police as the primary contact now. The person comes out of detention, they come through our facility. Our facility has a minimum mandate of keeping somebody for about 21 days. In 21 days, a whole lot is going on. So we do an initial intake, we do an assessment to determine what their needs are. If their needs are financial, if their needs are mental, we begin to talk to the hospitals, who would be our partner agency in this situation. The hospital, can we get access to a psychiatrist? Because I'm a crisis intervention
Oh,
worker,
okay.
I am not a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist would use behavioral therapy to determine what the medical next step would be. So there are
Mm-hmm.
people whose behavior can be controlled by medication just because they get aggressive if they have not as a symptom of their withdrawal from the drug they use or the alcohol they use, because they're already dependent on most of these vices. So
Mm-hmm.
between going through our facility in 21 days, we've had clients that would really say, I really need to get my life together, but they don't know how. And that simple information, we begin to look at what factors do they have? Do they have kids? Do they have loved ones? Do they have family support? Do they have societal support? Do they want to go back to school? Do they want to learn a trade? So if they want to go back maybe into getting a job, we begin to talk to the necessary partner agencies. Let's say Alberta Works. What programs do you have for people that do not have any source of income? How do we get people into schools? We begin to call partner agencies in the educational sector. This person wants to learn a trade. This person wants to go through a mentorship program. And if you run 100 people through that system and you have a 40% success rate, that's a
Oh,
win. That's a
that's
huge win,
huge. Yeah.
because some people who are released into the system goes through that cycle sometimes 2 or 3 times. Some are not lucky to make it out alive through a cycle, but some of them, our safety net catches them on the third cycle. So they go between being released or coming out of the hospital, being arrested, going to jail, coming back, going through our centers. Some of them just go back to their abusers or go back to the street or leave midway. And sometimes they hit that point where they just pivot and it begins to take action just because there's no other way out for them. They just have to look at going through the treatment plan, going through all those plans. So sometimes it's on our end, every party has to just keep playing their role. So this is what I do day to day. I go to work every day. I pick up my phone whenever it rings, knowing that I'm about to either kickstart a process in someone's life or be part of the process that has been passed on to me. So while Kira wakes up every morning, she does what she needs to do on the policing side. I do what I need to do on my end. Liu does what she needs to do. You do what you need to do. At the end of the day, by the time we look at a cycle, there should be a change, which is why we are selfless. It's a service. everybody is not Kira, myself, Liyu. We don't go to work. We go to serve, because I could just push papers and do what programming I'm allowed to do. I don't have to do any assessment. But because we know that whatever we do impacts somebody's life, we have to do it selflessly with an aim to actually impact positive change.
That was so beautiful. I mean, I'm so touched by the work you do, Solomon. I'm sure that there's lots of kids out there and young people who have been impacted positively by the work you do. Um, and it is people like you who change their worlds completely, right? So thank you so much for that. And there was a little boy who was picking up starfish and putting it into the sea. And so somebody asked him, what are you doing? Like, how many starfish are you going to save? And so he said, that one, I just changed his world. And that's exactly what you're doing. So thank you for doing the work you do and changing the lives of some people who had no other way to have their lives changed. So it's just such a world of difference that you're making in their lives, and I'm sure that that's a very godly work. Thank you for that work. This has been quite an inspiring conversation for me because when I came into it, I was really worried about how it is going to turn out, and I'm so happy with the all the conversations I've had. Thank you so much to you, Kira, Solomon, and Liu for the amazing work you do in the community. I'm so inspired and by the stories that you shared with me today. Thank you so much. I'm sure the audiences will too.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank you
me.
so much for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. And I think I would want to probably close off by saying that none of this would be possible without community response, because you really can't force somebody into help. You really can't force people into change. Some of the things that Kira had spoken about, Liu had spoken about in their experiences, were able to be possible just because the person responded. You understand? So community response is one of the biggest catalysts that drives us into success. So looking at how policing is done, um, Kira goes professionally as a police officer. Does wearing the uniform negate the mental health issues she might be going through? No, but somebody from the community just sees that uniform and assume that they are looking at Captain America. So the police do a whole lot, suppressing a lot, and societal stereotypes as to, oh, I don't expect the police to have a mental breakdown. They are still a person. They are somebody's son, they are somebody's husband, they are somebody's child, they are somebody's guardian, they are somebody's friend. So everybody is going through the same thing. So it's a web of, regardless of what profession we hold, doctors, lawyers, engineers, cab drivers, millwrights, plumbers, just look out for the next person. If you are able to look out for the next person, the system would go around and look out for you as well. So I would want to salute everybody for what they do. They make my life easier as a person, and they make my job more fun because I'm happy to do it. My work is more than a paycheck to me, but none of it would be possible without the help of everybody, including those who we help. So thank you.
Thanks so much for this wonderful conversation. Would Kira like to say some famous last words?
Yeah, I would just like to say I appreciate everyone being here today, and it's true, it is a community, and none of us can do this alone. And life isn't easy. It's not easy for anyone. It's not easy for our youth. It's not easy as an adult sometimes. But if we all just look to who's to the right, to the left of us, and to who's behind us, and grab a hand and help those people, if we all did that, just like you say with the starfish, we all did that, we can make a difference. And it makes me feel good being in this space with you guys, to know that there's a lot of people looking out for our youth, because they are our next generation coming up in this world, and we need to take care of them. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all the compassionate work you do. It's amazing. Hats off to all of you. Thanks.
Take care.
And have a wonderful rest of your day. So we'll
Thank you
say
so
goodbye
much.
now. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.